Hey everybody, welcome back to Leah Tells You About Papua New Guinea. That's what we'll call it. So Papua New Guinea has a population of about 10 million people, and that's about 4 million more than the metropolitan area of Atlanta. But if you take that 10 million people and then spread it out over the entire state of California. So if California was completely empty and you took about double the Atlanta metropolis and then spread it out all the way throughout California, that would be what it's like in Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is a Pacific island nation, so it has a culture similar to that of Fiji, Indonesia, Micronesia, all those tiny little islands, but while also being a fairly larger island itself. Papua New Guinea is unique in that itself as a country has the largest number of languages in the world. As a country, it has over 800 languages. And the reason that it is so linguistically diverse is because of the makeup of the country. So I have my little prop back here. So the capital of PNG is Port Moresby, and it's located about right here. And all along these coastal regions, it is really hot, and what you would expect from a tropical island country. It's super hot, there are coconut trees, in the middle of the day, you know, everybody just kind of like slows down, takes a nap, like you've heard of a siesta, and that same thing kind of happens here as well. But that's only in the really hot coastal regions and in the smaller island regions. Where we are located on our mission center is up here in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. And up in the highlands, we're about a mile high. And so even that difference of just mountainous regions versus coastal regions, and then trying to walk between the two, right? So from Port Moresby up to where we live, if we had highways like America, that would probably be about a 4-hour drive. We don't have highways like in America, and it would take probably 10 to 12 hours to get from the highlands to the lowlands. And that's nowadays with buses and more improved vehicle technology. So back in the early days, no one had a reason to go from the highlands to the lowlands. And so all of these little pockets of language groups developed over time. And that's why there are so many different languages being separated by all of the mountain ranges and the valleys and things like that. And so then because of the diverse nature of the languages and language communities just kind of staying really isolated from each other for so long, that developed into what is called here the one talk system. So one talk, one talk. So if you speak the same language, you're in the same language group, that is your family. And so in Luke, when we hear the story of the Good Samaritan, they ask Jesus about what is written in the law, how do you read it? And he said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And then he said to justify himself, and who is my neighbor? And then Jesus replies with the story of the Good Samaritan, right? So if we think of that in terms of who is my neighbor, in Papua New Guinean culture, your neighbor is your language group, right? And anything for your language group that you do to help your language group is good, right? So if you go to another language group, steal from them, bring it back to your family, your clan, right? That's good because you've helped your neighbor. But then through the translation of the scripture and through the description of having the Jews look down upon the Samaritans, and then realizing in the Bible that Jesus would be going beyond his own ethnic group, the Jews versus the Samaritans versus the Gentiles, and seeing that, realizing, oh, everyone is my neighbor. When we do Bible translation here, after a Bible is translated and the scripture is dedicated, very soon after that, there will be what's called a scripture use workshop, where some of our workers will go to that language group and teach them how to use their scripture in their own language. And that might seem kind of weird, but so imagine getting all of your, if you're a pastor, you've gotten all of your training either in English or in a language that's called Tokpisin. So now the whole country has around over 800 languages. There is a single language that almost everybody knows, and it's called Tokpisin. And that language rose up out of the need to be able to communicate for trade. So back when Chinese and I think Dutch and everybody was using this Pacific corridor in order to do trading, this Tokpisin language just kind of rose up to help communicate, and it borrows from English words, Spanish words, German words. You can hear a lot of different linguistic influence over Tokpisin. And because Tokpisin didn't arise naturally out of a community just expressing itself, it arose out of, I need to buy this, you need to buy that, let's trade and communicate that way. The language of Tokpisin is very limited. So when you have in scripture a passage where Paul talks about redemption or salvation, justification, right? We even have trouble with those words in English. In Tokpisin, there's not a word for justification. So when a word like that is used, the Tokpisin translation, it has to describe what it is in like a paragraph. So the Tokpisin Bible is very thick compared to our own English translations, just because of the need to describe what something is using a whole lot of words or even a paragraph to just translate a single concept. But because this language is common, either that or English in higher education, when pastors in Papua New Guinea go get their pastoral training, it's either done in English or in Tokpisin. So when they go back to their talk place, their language group, and then they're going to preach there, they've only been taught in Tokpisin, and they only have Bibles, if their language hasn't been translated yet, in Tokpisin. And so they will use that language to communicate because that's what they've been taught in, and that's what everybody has and can reference. Once the Bible has been translated into their community's language, into their language group's actual language that has all of those diverse and nuanced and complicated words, like they will have a word for justification. They will have a word that can draw out those meanings, but they haven't been taught how to communicate scripture using those words. So we will have people come in and help those church leaders learn how to communicate those things in their language instead of the language they were taught in. And so then they'll come in and have a scripture use course for church leaders and just anyone who wants to attend to learn how to use their Bible in their own language, when for so long they've been using it in a different one. And then another course that we will do is called the Culture Meets Scripture, right? Every culture has good parts and bad parts. Every culture has parts of it that are biblical and parts that are not. And so what this course does is it invites whoever's taking the course to examine how they have been raised, how they have grown up, their way of thinking, how that's been influenced by their culture. So for me, that would be the American culture, and examining those things and examining what lines up with scripture and what doesn't, and really taking stock of that. And so then back to the Good Samaritan, right? So examining that, neighbor is more than just here. Neighbor is here. Neighbor is universal. Our Bible translation work began here in the 1950s, and the center that I live on got established here during that time and then grew. And now the center I live on is kind of our base of operations. So our center has the school, it has our administrative offices, it has permanent housing for the missionaries who come here, as well as housing for our Papua New Guinean staff who work here alongside us. We have an auto shop. We have a large training center where if we want to run large courses, we can bring multiple language groups here and fly them in with our aviation department and fly them in together to all get trained at the same time. And then you have different language groups who might be near each other working together, or you could have language groups that are on completely different sides of Papua New Guinea, but whose languages have similar grammar structure, and then they can work together and help one another as they are learning Greek and learning Hebrew, learning translation techniques for their languages. So the training center is a huge part of our translation effort here. We do have expatriate translators that go out and then work with Papua New Guineans in their language group. That's how it's been done since the 1950s, is going out into the language group and working together with people. But now that we can bring more people in together to train more at once, that's also a really awesome thing that can happen. As far as religion goes in the country, Papua New Guinea considers itself a Christian nation like America does. There is a lot sorcery and witchcraft, and when Christianity is brought into an area, there is often tension between the witch doctors and the people who are sorcerers in the area, and things like that. Christianity is the main religion of Papua New Guinea, but it can often get mixed in with ancestor worship and animalism. And while Christianity is proclaimed as the dominant religion, it will often be a mix of, oh, we'll take this Christianity from that we've been told about, and we'll just mix in our beliefs with it and just kind of mix it up and pop something out that is not biblical. And so again, like I said before, the goal of the Culture Meets Scripture, Scripture Use workshops, things like that, is to take the traditions and practices of a language group, compare them against Scripture, and see what sticks, and see if something is being treated as a god or as something of worship in place of God, and not necessarily, oh, cast that out. It's about putting it in its right place under God's lordship. So yeah, there's my little spiel about Papua New Guinea. Hopefully that gave you some insight into the country and the people here. And now we'll just take a little look at what my day looks like and what my work looks like on our missionary center here. There's my house. Here we go. All right, this is the only four-way stop on our mission center. This is kind of our main road junction intersection. That building right there in the, oh, hello, there, in the orange, that's our meeting house where we have church services. This blue building is our directorate. And then down here, this is our school. So let's keep going to school. My job here in our mission center is to teach, and so it's not that much different than teaching in America. So for this upcoming school year, I will be teaching AP Calculus, Geometry, and Grade 7 Math. I will also be a community group leader with our youth ministry department for the 6th grade girls, which means that we'll meet once a week at lunch, and we will discuss a Bible passage and just talk, and I'll get to know them, and then hopefully throughout the years I will stay with that same group. When I first got here 10 years ago, I began as a small group leader for a group of 8th grade girls, and I stayed with them all the way until they graduated high school. And that was a really cool cool thing to happen, just to get to know them, to watch them grow up, to be able to just speak into their lives and help them using my testimony and my story, and yeah, just giving them another adult to confide in and to talk with and just be there for them as a teacher or as a coach. Other than teaching, I also work with our youth ministry department, like I said, leading a small group. We will have a youth worship team band, and I help mentor that band. My main focus here is in youth ministry, it's being a teacher and then actually working with youth men, and then I also do music as well. Upcoming in September, I will be leading worship for our high school. We have a 5-day long camp, and I'm usually heavily involved in getting that up and running, and this year I'll be leading the worship team for that. And then we're also having a women's retreat for the ladies who live on Center, so expats, Papua New Guineans, all the ladies on Center are invited to a women's retreat, and I'll be leading worship for that as well. So that's just kind of the things that I do on the day-to-day basis. And so I'm just here to provide kind of a steady foundation for the kids here who live on our mission center. So thanks very much. If you have any other questions, let Caleb know, and I'll be sure to address them in the next one. Thanks, guys.